YouTubes. Wait for it. They're talking, they're thinking, they're mingling. Done. Okay, and I just heard myself in my ear, so now we're good. All right, we are on YouTube. Oh, and embarrassingly enough, it caught me doing this like dorky thing that I was doing prior to. That's all right. That's all right. Everybody on YouTube probably knows I'm a dork anyhow. So, hi, everybody. We are here with another Success Stories panel, AKA a FODMAP Freedom alumni panel, if I'm going to just be bold and say that right out loud at the beginning here. I am joined by Christian and Joanne, two of my favorite little baby ducklings from FODMAP Freedom, as I jokingly refer to them. Guys, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah. I was joking before we logged on. I was like, are you guys nervous about making your YouTube debut? They're terrified. They're terrified to be here, honestly. No, let's get started. So as I was saying earlier, you can feel free to share as much or as little of your kind of health story, your gut story, as you feel comfortable doing. I am going to make you guys battle to determine who goes first. So let's do a good old-fashioned rock, paper, scissors. We know how to play, right? So, all right, Christian versus Joanne. Ready? Right. Guys, what are we doing? Hold on, Joanne. Come on, Joanne. Cooperate, man. Okay. Rock, paper, scissors. This is going to be really difficult. Okay. Okay. Let's let Joanne go first then. Well, note to self, teach Joanne how to play rock, paper, scissors after the live stream. She's a noob. But yeah. So Joanne, what would you like to share of your story? I mean, I know, tidbits that I would share, but let's hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Okay, sure. So I guess I had IBS symptoms probably my whole adult life in the form of mostly constipation. But it didn't affect my quality of life, so I basically just worked with it. But in my 30s, I started with acid reflux. That was very painful. So I went on an acid-reducing medication at that time in the form of a PPI. But in 2017, things started to change. I was getting symptoms which I called flares, which included very painful stomach spasms, loose, frequent stools, until I completely emptied out and felt depleted. And then I would have inflammation for days at a time afterwards. But then I would go back to normal for several months. I had no issues, and then it would come on again. Fast forward to 2020, and those flares became more frequent until I was having them twice a week, and I was inflamed all of the time. So I went to my gastroenterologist, who basically told me this was normal for you. And when you had frequent stools, take a fiber supplement. And when you had constipation, a stool softener. But when I left his office, I knew something more was going on and things were a little more serious than that. So I started my own research. I requested a SIBO breath test, which that I was told came back positive. Okay. It was recommended I see a dietitian, which I did. And the dietitian put me on a low FODMAP diet. Within a year, my weight had dropped from 118 pounds to 98 pounds. Oof. And during that same time period, I had 4 SIBO breath tests, 4 rounds of Xivaxin, which is an antibiotic. And within one of those rounds, I had another antibiotic called neomycin. And I wasn't feeling any better. So it was also suggested by the dietitian that I try acupuncture. And I did acupuncture and Chinese herbs for approximately 6 months, but I did not feel any better. So that is basically my story. The only thing I found out in my research was that my probable cause of these symptoms was due to that acid-reducing medication that I had been on for 30 years. So I think that was my root cause.
Yeah, I think that is very plausible. And the mechanism makes sense, right? It messes with your digestion, it changes the pH of that ecosystem and what bacteria get to grow and not grow. And you inadvertently got yourself a nice heap and helping of extra bacteria and probably some dysbiosis in doing that. And like, to be clear, I've said this publicly before, but I'm going to reiterate here now. PPIs and acid suppressors are not intrinsically bad. They're not intrinsically evil, but it's, when there's no exit strategy in place and your doctor's like, oh, just here, take this indefinitely forever. And like nothing bad will ever happen to it. That's where I have a problem with it. And the fact that nobody brought this up to you in 30 years of being on a PPI, especially when you had these exacerbated symptoms, really like boggles the mind and frustrates the crap out of me. And I'm sure you too.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, if anything, they wanted to increase the dosage when it stopped working.
Yeah. If something doesn't work, just increase the dose. I mean, every now and then there's a morsel of truth to that, but yeah, I could go on about how it's a broken system in a multitude of ways, but yeah. So, well, I'm glad that somehow you found me and my stuff, and you eventually learned that this was a root cause for you and started kind of plucking away. And I know we had talked about too, like the weight loss. It's also very alarming and very disheartening that you lost all that weight. You were 118 pounds. You were a teeny little thing anyway. You didn't really have 20 extra pounds to lose. So the fact that you were put on a restrictive diet and then you dropped 20 pounds that you weren't at the leisure of losing, like the fact that the GI doctor or the dietitian didn't pick up on that is also very frustrating. And actually, guys, can I reveal something to you and whoever's tuned in live right now? I've been working on a project. So I don't know if you guys came across my SIBO mistake series that I did way back in 2017 and 2018, if you can even believe that. I decided to re-record and revamp it. And those original videos are actually going to go night-night soon. And I'm going to post the new series of 14 SIBO mistakes. So I've kind of condensed it down to the core few that I think matter the most. And one of them is ignoring red flags. And one of the big red flags that I see all the damn time is weight loss, or I should say unintentional weight loss. That should be a huge red flag that you're malnourished and that something's not working. But I see it get ignored either by individual people or by healthcare professionals all the dang time. And it's really alarming. Yeah. But well, thank you, Joanne. By the way, I think we might have a slight audio lag with you, Joanne. I don't think it's affecting Christian at this point, but just FYI, like if it seems like I'm pausing a little bit more after saying something, it might be just because I'm waiting to see if you're going to start responding, because I think there's a slight lag in the audio. I don't know if there's anything that either you or I could do for that, but it seems like it at least. But yeah, well, thank you. All right, Christian, since we didn't get to do the rock, paper, scissors, I'm sorry. You didn't get to battle it out, duke it out for first place, but you get to go now. So same thing. You could share as much or as little as you would like what was kind of going on up until the point where you found me and joined FODMAP Freedom, and like, what were your symptoms like and what was your gut story?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start off with, like, as a kid up until like when I was in college, I had a bunch of random infections that I had to go on antibiotics for. Um, just like random like throat infections. I had my tonsils got infected a lot. And then in 2016, like a couple months before I was about to graduate college, I actually was hospitalized for diverticulitis for some reason, and then I ended up being on like some crazy antibiotics for 2 weeks, and I'm assuming that did a big toll on my body. And then I kind of went on with like my regular life, started working, and then like a lot of other people, 2020 came around, and like I started getting into weird eating habits. Um,
Mm,
like I found like because I wasn't able to go out, I ended up getting into the whole of intermittent fasting. So I like kind of didn't eat as much as I used to. I did lose a lot of weight. My blood work was fine. Everything was seemingly normal, but I did lose a lot of muscle. Something still fell off. But then in 2022 of October, I ended up getting a really nasty infected cyst. which ended me on another round of antibiotics. And I think that was like the piece of straw that broke the camel's back. And
Yeah.
then weeks or within a month after that, I started getting a bunch of weird symptoms like adrenaline rushes from random things, dizziness, nausea from eating foods I normally ate. It seems like I couldn't digest anything. Like I would eat like my normal food, like vegetables and stuff, mostly cooked, stir fried, and like they'd go straight through me. Like I wasn't
Mm.
absorbing anything. Some foods like it feels like it wouldn't digest at all. It just sit in my stomach. Sometimes it felt like it was stuck in my chest.
That brick of
Um,
lead feeling that I talk about
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. I lost my appetite for some time. Um, I just felt like very weak and tired, and it's just like unlike me because I grew up playing sports. I competed in powerlifting for several years. I was very, very active. Like right before the cyst infection, like I was taking daily walks, working out several times a week, and then getting hit by a bus and not being able to do any of that
Mm.
stuff. Um, and then like immediately, like from January of 2023, so a couple months after my infection, like I tried to like go back to my normal life, like settle down after the holidays, but things were not getting better. Um, like I ended up trying to go back to like my normal diet of what I thought was normal, like meat, veggies, rice, and then I
Yeah.
found myself like peeing a lot, like
Mm.
abnormally a lot. So I
Mm.
was just like, oh, I'll go to the doctor. I brought that up to the doctor, and they immediately thought, oh, you probably have
Diabetes.
diabetes or
Yeah.
some sort of insulin resistance. I was like, sure. Both my parents have it. Let's get that tested. All my blood work came back perfectly normal. Like
Mm.
they said they'll call me if there's anything wrong. I got the test results, didn't receive a call back at all. Everything was in the green. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And for that whole year, um, 2023, I was going in and out of like paying for my own blood test, trying to figure out something, talking to different holistic practitioners, trying to
Mm.
find a solution. And like I was testing different vitamins, supplements, and all this stuff, and I still couldn't really get any progress like I wanted to. Um, but then luckily I found you and like finally got the information I needed rather than going in and out of Reddit, Facebook groups and testing different supplements that I spent. Like my mom, even after moving out, she still asks when I'm gonna get rid of like the random supplements I have, and it's like two full baskets of stuff I don't even touch anymore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And
yeah,
it's,
it's
you probably, hopefully won't touch them again, right? Because you're
probably
doing
not.
a
I
lot
probably
better
should just
now.
throw them away.
But also you're like, ooh, I spent a lot of money on those things. Like I
Yeah,
kind of want to keep them just in case. Yeah. The supplement graveyard, as I call it.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Goodness. Yeah. Well, and yeah, here we have a case of, again, I think you guys are a beautiful little pair right now because we've got Joanne with what I think is a pretty slam dunk case of SIBO. And I know, like, I probably get a lot of crap in the YouTube comments for being like a SIBO denier or something now. I'm not a SIBO denier. It's just that it is overdiagnosed and the testing is not perfectly accurate. But like with Joanne, with you being on PPIs for 30
Mm,
freaking years,
mm.
you probably had some genuine bona fide overgrowth in that intestine of yours. And I would even be comfortable calling that real bona fide SIBO at that point. And then Christian, like, I don't know if SIBO really ever resonated with you, but I think dysbiosis definitely makes sense for you. And it's like, you kill off some species and some more species. And it was like there was this tipping point where, as you said, the straw that broke the camel's back, where you were able to cope up until a certain point, and then maybe it was the difference of losing a few more species or like decreasing their quantity just enough. But then it was like your body couldn't function normally anymore without those good microbes by your side. And things started going hangwire at that point. So yeah, we've got what I would consider to be more of a SIBO case and more of a dysbiosis case here. And so that's kind of cool. That was not intentional on my part either. I just reached out to some of my favorite people and saw if you could join the live stream, but that worked out nice. Um, let me actually check the chat because I typically forget to do that here. Yeah, somebody just said, I don't know if they will read the comments. Occasionally I will. I don't keep the tab open because it'll be distracting to like see a laggy version of my own head moving around on the other screen, but I do occasionally look at it. Okay, so like somebody, for example, N, asked, what is the difference between dysbiosis and SIBO? That's a complicated question. I'll just spend a moment on it if I can, guys. Classically, what you're going to hear on the internet and what you're going to see in a lot of research is that SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, is an increased quantity of bacteria. So it's like if the room only is supposed to hold 5 people, but you have 15 in that room. It's a quantity thing, it's a number thing. That's kind of the model that is generally proposed for SIBO. What I will say is that now some newer research, including newer aspirate studies, are starting to indicate that even SIBO is more of a dysbiosis situation. And it seems that the dysbiosis in the small intestine is more strongly correlated with symptoms or lack thereof, as opposed to the actual number of bacteria. So I don't truly know at this point how relevant the quantity of bacteria is, even for people with SIBO versus the dysbiosis. And the dysbiosis would be an imbalance between the good and the bad critters in an ecosystem. So you could have bacterial dysbiosis, which is mostly what we end up talking about. You could have fungal dysbiosis, because there actually are good and bad yeast species in the gut. And you could maybe theoretically have like parasitic dysbiosis or other flavors too. But it's that imbalance between the good and the bad, to a point where, again, it's like that tipping point where now you start getting weird symptoms, or you start getting more inflammation, or you can't make some of these good metabolites that you would normally make. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. But going back to you guys, because I invited you here for this party, so gotta keep the train a moving here. May I ask, and we'll start with Christian this time, since you got gypped last time. You were robbed of your rock, paper, scissors tournament here. Do you recall, like, were there any things, like, let me say it this way. You must have tried a lot of things before you found success working with me. Do you remember like some of what those things were or what that looked like? And do you have a hypothesis as to why they didn't work for you?
Yeah, I think one of the first things I came across just randomly was like the high dose thiamine or B1.
Mm-hmm.
Just because like I'm not sure, I forgot the guy's name, but he was like saying if like you have these type of issues, it could possibly be linked to a B1 deficiency. And I was like, and they said one of the causes for a B1 deficiency is like eating of a lot of white rice. I'm Filipino, rice has been in my staple forever. And I was like, oh, that has to be my issue. And I actually got it tested. And before I started taking like a specific B1 supplement, and it was already slightly above. And like, I was just like, how is this? But I was already taking a B complex that had it in there. And then after that, I tried like high dose vitamin D supplementation, because vitamin D has always been one of my something that I've been lacking for the longest time. I remember the first time I was told I was vitamin D deficient was probably in elementary, middle school.
Okay, yeah.
And then I tried that and my numbers didn't change at all. So I was just like, something wasn't clicking. Like it wasn't what I was intaking, there was something else. And then even after that, I one of the practitioners I worked with tried to get me to take these beetroot or not beetroot, beet green supplements to help bile flow. And I was just like,
Okay.
I feel worse on this. Like I don't think it's making me feel any better. I was taking for each meal it was like 4 capsules of just like ground up greens, and I was just like, I don't feel any better. And then they were like, oh, you probably have SIBO. Try taking D-limonene. That'll help you clear out before you try to take any probiotics. I was like, okay. I did it. I thought I felt better, but I was just like, I still feel bad. Like I still felt very like at that point I still had that feeling of not being able to digest food. But it wasn't until like working with you, it's like it might have been just something I was eating, or like I was just not eating the right things. But I've tried a bunch of different stuff, supplementation wise. I even tried to go on keto. I've tried juice fasting. I've tried intermittent fasting again, even though I have a bad history of that. And then, I mean, it wasn't until I forgot, I don't know what lesson it was, but just like working on nutrition, like chronometer. I still use chronometer every day now, and hitting those numbers. And like, I feel like that's a big contributor to how I felt. Because like previously I was lacking B1 because I stopped taking a B complex altogether. And I was lacking B1 on my chronometer. And until like recently, and I was just like, is this why I feel a little bit better nowadays? Just because like I'm hitting 90 to 100% of all my nutrients.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're
I've tried a
nourished.
lot of,
Who knew?
yeah, a lot of little things like that, like I
Yeah.
think helped to get to where I am now.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you say that because that's been my experience, like observing all of you guys, is that for whatever reason, we all, myself included, have this brain lesion where we think that it's going to be like one big thing. Like we're going to find it, and then we're going to treat it, and then it's going to go away, and our life is going to change. And
Yep.
it's like that one smoking gun. And it's at least with this crowd of people, like the IBS, SIBO, dysbiosis, candida, leaky gut kind of crowd, it's very rarely one smoking gun. Like, oh God, it was the blueberries all along. Who knew? It's usually this kind of annoying journey of like, oh, I get 5% benefit here, 10% benefit here, maybe 22% benefit here. And it's this like addition game, and it happens really gradually. And it's not going to be an overnight black or white, oh wow, I tried this thing. And I'll say this too while it's top of mind. So your story, I think, is striking in the sense of it feels like a lot of what you were doing was ineffective, I think would be the word. Obviously ineffective, but like kind of a hodgepodge. And
Yeah.
even the practitioner who was like, oh, the beet powder green thing didn't work for you, therefore you must have SIBO, therefore let's try D-limonene. Like that seems like such a grasping at straws thing to
Yeah.
do, to just make those three jumps. But I think one of the things that I like leading you guys through is before we get into the meat and potatoes of the program is that we talk a lot about the root causes. And we don't talk about here's a list of root causes, but we talk about a timeline of like, okay, was there a point where you went from healthy, normal, feeling good to no longer feeling healthy, normal, pretty good? And if so, what was happening around that time? And now I think you have a deeper understanding of like, oh, you had to take a bunch of antibiotics and gradually that chipped away at your microbiome. And then there was that one course of antibiotics that just nudged you off the edge. And then heaven forbid you have that coupled with poor or inadequate nutrition, plus, you know, heaven forbid you have stress or you don't sleep well or whatever else might be there. But it's like, I find a lot of people, they'll come to me and they'll be like, kind of panicky, like, oh my God, I don't know what my root cause is. I have so many potential root causes.
Yeah.
But then I talk to them and it's like, well, your IBS or your SIBO or whatever it might be just started 4 years ago. You're hypothesizing endometriosis, but like you've had endometriosis for 30 years. You know what I mean? Like, let's talk about the things that happened 4 or 5 years ago and look at those as true root causes or like more egregious root causes. And let's kind of leave the stuff that probably is less relevant. Anyway, so yeah, I think getting back to the basics of like the timeline of when did this happen and when did the symptoms appear and like what actually makes sense from a timeline perspective probably offered some clarity for you, because it sounds like it was just kind of this weird squirrely hodgepodge up until that point.
Yeah, for sure. Especially like thinking back at it now, the time of the infection, like I finished the summer off and I was like job applying, which is very stressful.
Mm,
And just like, I don't know, just that amount of stress and the infection made me more stressed. Just added a whole bunch of bodily stress, which kind of like compounded and everything. And like, especially during that time, it was around like November, December of that year. So it's holidays. So like it wasn't on top of my mind at that time. But like, I guess once the adrenaline wore off come January, that's when
mm,
it all hit me. And I was just like, why is this? And like that's when I tried to revert back to what I was doing before. And I remember you mentioning, because I was previously taking a probiotic for regularly for almost 2 years. And then you mentioned that like it didn't work because your system changed in
mm,
that time period. And I was just like, huh, I guess that makes sense. Because like I remember during the course of the antibiotics, I double or triple dosed that antibiotic just because, or the probiotic, because I looked it up. It's like probiotics are good for when you're on antibiotics. I was like,
mm.
yeah, I'll just take extra of this. But I'm not sure if it kind of just like pushed me out of imbalance. Probably did, but like it probably didn't help that I did that. But I guess it took me a while to realize that.
Yeah. Or again, maybe it was just ineffective.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I don't remember where I would have made that point either, maybe in a Q&A, but you're right. we have this experience of our lives being just one continuous thing. And like, I am me.
Hmm.
And that's all we know. And so we have this perspective of like, well, it worked for me before. Why isn't it working now? Or why did it wear off? And it's like, but you've changed,
Yeah.
right? So like, oh, I mean, there's a million things, right? Like, are you more stressed than you were now? Are you getting shittier sleep now? Were you like hella stressed then? Were you eating a different diet? Did you give birth? Have your hormones changed? Did you go through menopause? Like, there's a million variations of, or like, did you have to take antibiotics or a PPI? Like, there's a million variations of you're different now. So the same stuff may or may not work for you. And your needs have changed. Like, as your body has evolved, your needs have changed. And so you might need to change what probiotic you take or, what strategies you're using. Because, you're evolving and you're changing and you just kind of have to adapt with that, I guess, is the point. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Christian. Joanne, same question to you. Can you think of some things that you tried prior to like joining FODMAP Freedom and working with me? Can you think of things that you tried that did not work for you? And do you have any perspective now as to like why they did not work for you?
The word stress comes to mind. I tried digestive enzymes. That didn't do anything at all. I think I was just so inflamed for so long that it didn't matter what I tried. My vagus nerve was fried. All I did was research. I would research everything, and one site would bring me to another. One doctor would bring me to another. One supplement would make me research another, to the point where I was just overwhelmed all of the time.
Yeah.
And I just, nothing seemed to work. I just felt isolated, overwhelmed. And again, when I was doing all this research, thankfully, it kept coming around to you and to FODMAP Freedom, because at one time, I think I was following 4 different doctors, including you, and one at a time, they went off the list. Your program
I
just
stuck
made
around.
sense to me. Well, it just made sense. And I did a ton of research. I spent most of my time doing that. But yeah, I was just too inflamed. Every food bothered me. I mean, I just couldn't do anything. I thought I tried, like I said, with the dietitian, and she was wonderful. Don't get me wrong. She tried everything, giving me recipes, try this, try that. And same thing with the acupuncturist. I think he was so upset that he couldn't help me. Really, there was another woman that had SIBO symptoms, and he basically called her up and said, "Don't even come to me," because he couldn't help me, and he just felt so bad. He said, I know it was awful, but I just think, again, I was just so stressed out, and I had to get beyond that, and that didn't happen until I signed up for your program. At that point, as soon as I made the decision to go with FODMAP Freedom, I can't even tell you, there was like this peace that came over me, because I could disconnect from the internet.
It wasn't your burden anymore.
It wasn't my burden. I felt that I was going to get the support I needed. And again, this was before the program even started. I could just relax. I hadn't felt that way in a very, very long time. So, yeah.
It's the damnedest thing. I've heard some people say something similar, or even just in the first week or two. But I think that part of it too, now I'm trying to remember what iteration you went through, Joanne, because so I re-recorded all of FODMAP Freedom in like summer and fall of 2023, and the new and improved version rolled out in fall of 23. And the very first thing I tell you in that, and this would have been the version you went through, Christian, but I forget for Joanne, but the very first thing I tell you, lesson 1, module 0 is you are hereby forbidden from Googling and going on Reddit threads and going on Facebook groups and listening to podcasts and doing any of that bullshit research. And I have had people slip up and accidentally reveal that they have been in the forums or Googling, and I call their ass out on it.
Yes.
And it's because
Yeah.
of what you just said. You don't realize you're stressing yourself out so much and you're carrying this burden on your shoulders. And it's too much. You're frying your vagus nerve. And it becomes this scenario of like you're shooting yourself in the foot and then you're complaining that your foot hurts. And then you're like shooting at your foot more to see
Totally.
if it helps the foot feel better. And at some point it doesn't work anymore. So that's part of the requirement for FODMAP freedom is like, you give that to me. Let me be the one figuring out like how to help you and make sense of all of this. And I tell people, if you want to save, if you want to put it in your bookmarks in your browser or open up a Word document and save the URLs for all of your beloved Facebook groups and Reddit threads and YouTube channels, you can save them for later and you can go back after 100 days if you really feel like that's necessary. But hopefully it's not necessary. And yeah, it's frying your vagus nerve. And the irony of saying this on a YouTube live stream and talking to people who are probably researching their own case using my YouTube channel right now, the irony of that does not escape me. But I do think that's an important part of the journey for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
That bagel tone.
Yes.
And I think if I can tangent off of that for a quick moment, and then I'll check some of the comments on YouTube again. I think stress is a really big one, and it's a hard sell. Like, I think you have to be in the right headspace to be open-minded to that conversation, frankly. It's a hard sell. And what I see oftentimes is that people will get their knickers in a twist because they will tell me, but stress didn't cause this. And like, they will have an understanding of the PPI caused this, the antibiotics caused this, the food poisoning caused this. And the argument kind of becomes, therefore, my stress, stress is not my root cause. It's not my trigger that caused all of this. Therefore, stress does not matter. Therefore, I refuse to work on my stress or my mental health. And it's like, but it could be keeping you stuck now, right? There's the root
Yes.
cause. There's the root cause that shoves your ass off the cliff. And then there's the root cause that's like a brick full of I'm sorry. My words are all over the place today. I don't know what it is. I'm just so excited to be here. There's the root cause that's like wearing a backpack full of bricks. And now it's a hell of a lot harder to crawl back up onto that solid ground that you were on. And it had nothing to do with who shoved your ass off the cliff. It's just harder to climb back up if you're wearing a backpack full of bricks. And that's oftentimes how stress, anxiety, mental health, vagal tone kind of stuff gets wrapped up in this, is that the journey itself, falling from the cliff itself, is inherently stressful. And so we kind of have to untease at least a little bit of that in the process of going through this.
Right.
I'm not saying you have to be totally zen and kumbaya and like quit your job and move to a beach, although that would be wonderful if you could. But you gotta acknowledge the role of stress, at least a teensy bit. I guess that's what I would require of people. So yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that I think is important for a lot of people to understand. Let me check the comment section a little bit. Let's see, and I'm going to kind of skim. Okay, this is not directed at the group, but I'm going to pause here for a second. Catherine said, I have 3 GI maps that came back with SIBO plus an Air 2 device which shows SIBO. Yes. First of all, you cannot diagnose SIBO with a stool test. I don't care how much the people who profit off the GI map tell you that you can. The research is very definitive and very clear. We cannot and will never be able to diagnose SIBO via a stool test. So the GI map, not going to diagnose SIBO. It could maybe help you understand dysbiosis in the colon, but that's a different situation. Also, the Air 2, like the food marble type devices, that's going to fall prey to the same issue that SIBO breath tests do. And I have numerous videos on this channel talking about why breath testing, including but not limited to the food marble, are mediocre at best, but really bad at worst. So I'll kind of leave it at that. Let's see. Somebody brought up how to feed good bacteria. Oh, let's quiz the group, guys. All right. Guys, how do you feed good bacteria? Like in the case of dysbiosis, for example, if you want to feed some good guys, what sort of things might this person think about?
More fiber.
Yeah, fiber is going to be a good one. Let me kick it bonus round to Joanne. Can you think of something other than fiber that might feed good bacteria? They didn't know they were going to have a quiz like this, guys.
I took a prebiotic. That was very helpful to me.
Yeah.
With SIBO anyway. I mean, but good nutrition. I mean, increasing. With me, it was always taking away until I joined your program. And then it was adding more of the fruits and vegetables to help heal. And that's what I did.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was a good response. I would say, you could look at it through the lens of fiber, which you're going to get primarily from fruits, vegetables, and legumes, and to some extent whole grains. You could think about so there's this umbrella of prebiotics, which means that they feed good bacteria in the gut. And underneath that, we have prebiotic fiber, which is what we tend to think about the most. But there's also what I was fishing for as the bonus point is polyphenols, as an example. So things like coffee and dark chocolate and pomegranate and berries, like those deeply colored antioxidant rich foods have prebiotics, but it's not a fiber type of prebiotic. It's these polyphenol chemicals that could do it too. So I would say polyphenols, fiber, also getting a diverse array of these things in your diet is really important. I always pick on my poor Uncle Paul, and I kid you not, I'm not making this up. My Uncle Paul, the only vegetable the man willingly eats to this day is carrots. Every year for Thanksgiving, I make him what I jokingly call carrots and white carrots, and it's carrots and parsnips. So I make him eat one more vegetable at Thanksgiving every single year, and it's a running gag in the family now. But otherwise, it's just carrots. He could eat 30 pounds of carrots a day, but he's only going to feed the bacteria that like carrots. So he's still going to have dysbiosis, even if he's eating pounds and pounds and pounds of vegetables every day. Versus you take somebody else who's eating a more modest amount of vegetables. For the record, my Uncle Paul does not eat that many carrots. Like there's a quantity issue and a quality issue, just to be clear about my Uncle Paul. But, in theory, he could eat 30 pounds of carrots and it wouldn't do that much better. But, you take somebody else who's eating a serving of carrots and a serving of cucumber and a serving of avocado and a serving of Brussels sprouts and a serving of whole wheat toast and a serving of oatmeal, and they're getting that variety throughout the day. That's going to be much better for feeding your gut bacteria and creating a diverse, resilient, stable, happy gut microbiome. And that's more of the strategy. So like similarly, if you think that you could just replace the fiber in your diet with just like a big old scoop of PHGG, that is something, and it can help a lot of people, but it's not going to replace what you could do with food, because you're not going to get that diversity typically with supplements. It's the goal should be to get back to food eventually. Let me see. And maybe what I'll do too. Oh, somebody did answer polyphenols. I'm so proud of you guys. And Blake, you are incorrect. It is not $8,000 for my program. So I don't know where you're getting that number from. There's two variations. So there's like the main FODMAP Freedom program, which is about $3K. And then if you wanted to do the Gut Guru upgrade, that does total at $5, but it's not 3 plus 5. You would pay an additional $2,000 after you apply to Gut Guru later. And it's because you get text support and appointments with me and more kind of bells and whistles with that. But the absolute most expensive version of my program right now is $5K. So for what it's worth. But okay, let's go back though. So now going back to the questions, for you guys is so I asked you what you did that you thought did not work and why you think it didn't work. Now to pivot back, what do you think actually helped you the most? Now I know we established it's probably an additive effect from many small things rather than like one gigantic aha moment. but I'm curious, were there any things that really stood out to you that were like, this was a big deal for me and why it worked? Anyone? Bueller?
Yes.
All right, Joanne, you want to go first, and then I'll pose the same question to Christian.
With me, before the program, I was eating all the time. I would get shaky if I wasn't eating within an hour and a half. Every meal, so lots of meals, feeling shaky, and that wasn't working for me. When I started watching my nutrients, making sure I was getting enough protein and only eating 3 times a day, making sure I had enough food to try to gain weight.
Yeah.
That's when I felt that I really did well. I was really starting to feel better with just 3 meals. And I'm consistent with the timing of those meals as well. I think my digestive system never had a chance to rest. I was just, which again, probably helped with me getting SIBO, just because there was never any cleansing of the digestion.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not shaky at all anymore. Like I said, I make sure I have enough protein with each meal.
Yeah.
And that's what worked for me the most.
And that's so funny. I love that you bring that up, because Christian kind of already mentioned the opposite, that he tried intermittent fasting. And if I may, I'll pause us here for a second to talk about this. So we see this oftentimes in the SIBO community, right? That you need to give your gut a break and let those cleansing migrating motor complex waves take effect and do their job and clear all of the junk out of the small intestine and push it down towards the colon. But I think that a lot of people, especially in recent years, take it a step too far, and then they go in the direction of intermittent fasting, or heaven forbid, there's a lot of people who eat 1 meal a day. And that's taking something with a grain of truth and taking it way too far. I think the big thing to know is that back in the day, like when I took my first nutrition classes in undergrad, all the way up through grad school, and even some functional medicine seminars, the old nutrition recommendation used to be 6 small meals a day to stoke your metabolism. And that's what we were told, and that's what we believed. And I know I, for many years, ate 6 small meals a day, and I thought that that was good for my metabolism. And that was kind of the current trend or the current recommendation at the time. That's too far over to one side for most people, right? Like, you're never giving your gut a break. But now we've swung the complete opposite direction. And now everybody's like, no, you must eat 1 meal per week. And that's the only way to do it. And so it's like, I find myself once again in the middle of this argument where I'm like, guys, can we just go back to 3 square meals a day? Like breakfast, lunch, dinner. It doesn't have to be super fancy and super sexy one way or another. Just like, can we meet in the middle, please? You should snack all the time, but also like 1 meal a day is totally overwhelming for your system. So yeah, it's funny because again, you guys are quite the little pair today, because again, it's like you both kind of went the opposite ways, and then supposedly came back and met somewhere in the middle with this particular recommendation. Yeah. And would you say that was accurate, Christian? So you had said that you had tried intermittent fasting, and then you've kind of landed more. How many meals a day do you eat now? I'm curious.
3.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unsexy, unglamorous, like your grandma and grandpa did it, and now you're doing it. It's like this boring stuff that ends up really helping people, but nobody listens to me. I've been preaching about the unsexy basics for 87 years here on YouTube, but that's all right. You'll all come to it in your own time. Yeah, too funny. Joanne, can you think of anything else that you felt was really helpful for you, or shall we kick the ball over to Christian?
When joining the program, you talked about just smelling your food when you're preparing your food, looking at your food, and just taking your time eating. Maybe it was the job I was in. I mean, it was a very fast-paced job, and you just ate quickly if you were going to get it in. And that seemed to happen at home as well. You just get into this eating fast.
Yeah.
Which once I slow down, I mean, sometimes I am the slowest one in any gathering to eat my food, but everybody knows it. But I make sure I chew my food and I'm relaxed when I do it. And I think that's made a huge difference too, just to enjoy it instead of getting it over with as fast as possible. Who wants to do that?
Yeah.
So I'm only eating 3 times a day. You can be sure I'm enjoying and taking my time eating those meals.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And see, I think this is part of the problem too with the restricted diets at times is that oftentimes, like take low FODMAP, for example, oftentimes we cut out a lot of the foods we love, like onion and garlic and avocado and wheat and dairy. And we frankly just don't enjoy our food as much anymore. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to have another boring old salad for the millionth time in 3 years. Oh, goody. And I think pretty early on, and I think it's module 1 probably, I love this GIF of Winnie the Pooh, and he's sitting down to have something to eat. I forget if it's honey or if it's something else, but it's this GIF of Winnie the Pooh, and he's doing this little like happy dance as he's getting ready to eat. And that, I tell you guys, that's the goal. Like you want to be excited to eat your food. You want to be connected with that food. You want to give your nervous system a heads up that food is coming in. So like look at your food, smell your food, like prepare for it, taste it, feel it on your tongue, like feel the sensations, really just take in that sensory experience of eating your food. And yeah, we don't do that here in the United States. I think maybe what we need to do is we all need to go on some like European boot camp and we need to go like live in Europe for 6 months because I've been told that when Americans go to Europe that it's a totally different eating culture and they eat, they take like 57 hours to eat one meal over there and the Americans scarf their food and they want to go do tourist things. So yeah, maybe the cure-all is that we all need to go and live in Italy for a month or 6.
Sounds good to me.
Oh. I don't know, but maybe we could try to cultivate that more here at home in our day-to-day life when we're not on vacation. Maybe that's the better plan. Yeah. Well, thank you, Joanne. I think both of those things are certainly going to help your motility and they're going to help your nervous system understand when it needs to do its job and when food is coming in. So that makes perfect sense to me why that would work so well. And notice with those recommendations, you could do them for free, right? Like you don't need an expensive GI map test or a food marble or a supplement or regimen. Like you could do that for free. And it's a lifestyle thing. But the thing is you have to put in the effort and you have to remember to do it every day and you have to make it a habit. That's the thing. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Joanne. Same question posed to you, Christian. So what do you think did end up helping the most? And do you have any perspective on why it helped?
Yeah, kind of going back off what Joanne was talking about, like meal timing was a big thing for me because like I mentioned, like I had a big, weird, like unhealthy relationship with fasting just because in my head I always found myself to be like a volume eater. So I'd like to eat a lot at one time. So that's why I came to do like 2 meals a day. But then I found like towards the end of it, before I transitioned out of it, that's when I started losing my appetite, and like not feeling as hungry for those meals just because like I'd be eating so much food at one time that my body wasn't able to process my meal before I got to the next one. So like I think switching over to 3 moderate meals a day kind of like helped with my hunger cues because I probably didn't feel hungry for almost a year before working with you. Like that's something like
Yeah.
that it's not fun. Like when I go out to eat or have a family event or even just eat at home, I want to feel hungry. I want to be able to enjoy my food when I eat it. Um, so switching over to 3 meals a day kind of helped a lot. But one thing I
Yeah.
wanted to mention was kind of like stress and sleep.
Mm.
Like managing that a lot because like especially coming from a very active lifestyle, being active, working out several times a week, like I'm putting a lot of stress on my body. And then doing that, coming home, staring at screens, working at my desk for a lot of time,
Mm.
and then going after that, being on my phone. Um, like I remember finding like you mentioned the red light glasses. I already had a pair of them, so like that was one thing. But I like I then realized like I'm mindlessly scrolling, just not, it's kind of stimulating myself for no reason.
Yeah.
So I found myself kind of like switching off. Like I have this reminder on my phone around 8:30, 9 o'clock, about 2 hours before I go to sleep, to put my phone down and just
Mm.
like leave it where it is. Like I don't even bring my phone into my bedroom anymore. It's on the kitchen table for whenever the next
Yeah.
morning is. Just like I'm able to like kind of unwind, and that's kind of helped me like kind of disconnect, because one of the biggest issues I had was like being able to sleep consistently through the night. For months on months, I wasn't able to sleep more than 3, 4 hours at a time, and I think
Oof.
it's just because like I'd be going to sleep with my mind thinking of my phone, and then having to wake up going straight to my phone, and
Yeah.
then being on screens, blue light blasting in my eyes. Even though I did have the blue light glasses that I wear every night, still being able to kind of disconnect, like and kind of like decompress and like kind of relax. Even in the
Yeah.
morning, like I do check my phone like just for a little bit as I'm like making my morning cup of water. But then after that, before I even do anything else, before eating breakfast, I started doing like somatic exercises that kind of help me like get my body moving for the day. It's just
Mhm.
like stretching and like breathing exercises. And like I've recently added like lymphatic drainage, like tapping,
Mm.
past couple months. And like I've kind of like he's mentioned, like routine like builds up like a lot of like consistency over time builds up a lot of like good results. And like my fiance always makes fun of me, like we're complete opposite in the way like I'm very structured. I like my routine and she's not. But the
Ah.
thing is, like for me at least, like I feel like I strive so much on these routines. Like it kind of goes back into like having my 3 meals a day, putting my phone down, making sure I'm done eating at this time, and then having like my relaxation time. Like that's helped a lot, just because I
Mm.
remember, I think you mentioned like sleeping is like where you like heal the most. I'm not sure if you said that or something like that, but like after I started sleeping well, I started feeling a lot better. Like for
Yeah.
the longest time, I thought it was specifically something that I was eating, something I had to change to my diet, but like I haven't really changed what I've been eating since I've been on the program. Like still vegetables, roasted vegetables, proteins here and there. But
Mhm.
like sleep has been like the most improved thing since like
Mm.
I finished the program. Like even on my Fitbit, like I was averaging probably 30, 40 minutes of deep sleep a night, which is
Mm.
like I think is pretty bad. But recently, minimum like hour 30 every night.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I've been
That's huge.
dreaming every night, which is something I haven't had in a long
Yeah.
time. And like, yeah, I just being rested and like relaxed has helped me a lot outside of the
Yeah.
eating stuff.
Yeah. That it makes so much sense, right? And sleep is one of those unsexy basic things that I talk about quite a bit, but I think the majority of people um, uh, downplay the significance of it. But the way that I look at it, and I probably articulated something like this in FODMAP Freedom to you guys, is that a lot of what we're dealing with is poor digestion and maybe poor motility, right? Like that migrating motor complex that we talked about with
Mhm.
Joanne. So your nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve, is going to control both of those things, or at least dictate their function to a great degree. So it's like, okay, we go from digestion and motility as a focal point. We could take it back a step to autonomic nervous system, vagus nerve kind of stuff. And then we could go back another step and we could just say, okay, well, that pathway is made up of neurons. What do neurons need to be happy and healthy and do their job well? They need good blood sugar. So if your blood sugar is super high or super low or swinging all over the place, good luck. Your nervous system is going to be PO'd on a regular basis. Good stable blood sugar, vitamins, minerals, protein, like good nutrition, basically, good blood flow, and proper stimulation. It's a pretty short list what neurons want to be healthy. But if you think about, oh, and sleep, sleep also would fall under this too. So, from a stimulation perspective and a sleep, like kind of regeneration, healing perspective, it makes sense that this would be good for your vagal tone and therefore your gut function. Um, yeah. And I don't know how much I talked about like the screens and stuff specifically in FODMAP Freedom, but you stumbled on some things that I've been working on in my personal life too. So similarly, I don't look at my phone first thing in the morning. I actually have what I jokingly call a nanny app. that blocks me from even, so if I forget and I'm just like, oh, and I'm not thinking about it, the app will actually tell me, you're not allowed to go on Facebook yet. So, which is so dumb that I need that, but it works. So, no scrolling, nothing in the morning. And I charge my phone on the other side of the room because I still use it for my alarm. But again, I don't look at it first thing in the morning. And I also have an alarm set so that I put my phone on the charger and I don't look at it for the rest of the night at a certain point. And that has been really, really huge for me. And I don't even know if it's entirely the blue light. I think there's something beyond that.
Yeah.
Because I had a patient, I think it was earlier this year, she was telling me this, and she said she would read before bed, and she had a Kindle. And she, the screen on a Kindle kind of grays out, so it looks remarkably similar to paper, and it's not very bright, and it's the same color as a paper book would be. And she would read a book for an hour or so before bed on the Kindle with the settings that way. And she would wear her blue light blocking glasses. And she got a Whoop band, which is one of these things that measures heart rate variability. And she noticed consistently that she was in a high stress mode for the first hour or two of her sleep every single night. And she just on her own put two and two together and thought about, well, I am looking at a screen, albeit with blue light blocking glasses, and it's designed to look more like a real sheet of paper. I wonder if that's it. And she did a trial and she started reading an actual paper book instead of her Kindle. And immediately she saw a huge change in the sleep. And now she's in a low stress state for the entirety of her sleep. And I'm like, gosh darn it. Like, that stinks because none of us want to put the damn phones down, myself included. I love reading webtoon comics late at night. And I love watching K-pop dance videos late at night on my damn phone. And that was so depressing for me to hear. I thought, oh, I could just wear the blue light blocking glasses and put the app on that blocks the blue light, and that's good enough. No, apparently not. So in the last handful of months, I've also been much more diligent about putting my phone away at night and not looking at it in the hour or two before bed. And also I don't look at it for probably the first half hour or more that I'm awake in the morning. I'll wake up, I'll make some tea, I'll put away the dishes from the dishwasher, I'll start getting my daughter's breakfast and my breakfast ready. Like, I'll do other things for a good 20 or 30 minutes before I even look at the phone. And that's been really helpful for me too.
Can I also add something since you brought up tea?
Yeah.
I've just kind of been like very adding on to my habits. Like, I've been finishing my day off, like right when I put my phone away, I make myself a cup of chamomile tea. It's been like months and months, and it's just like, especially because it's very cold right now, it's been like a really nice way to kind of like unwind. And I remember you mentioning chamomile being a prokinetic, so it's like it helps kind of like finish my digestion for my dinner and kind of like warm me to go to bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's been something I've been doing for months.
Yeah. Humble chamomile. And did you take my advice? Did you buy the real legit chamomile
Oh, yeah.
instead of the crap at the grocery store?
Yeah.
And is it far superior, like I said?
Yeah, I actually I took a trip recently and they had like the tea bags and they don't taste, I don't even know if it's chamomile inside.
Yeah.
It doesn't taste anything
Probably
like
not.
it.
It's probably straw. I
Yeah.
don't know. No, yeah, I don't know if it's like how old the product is or how it's ground up to be put in the tea bags or what the source was or if it really is chamomile in the first place. But yeah, if you're going to try chamomile tea for digestion, guys, go to like Mountain Rose Herbs or Frontier Co-op, like go to one of the good bulk herb suppliers, buy a pound. It'll be 20 or 25 bucks, but you'll have a lifetime supply of the dang stuff. And it is so much better tasting and so much more medicinal and so much more of an enjoyable experience than the crap you'll get at the grocery store.
Yeah, I think I bought like maybe half a pound, 8 ounces, and I'm more like there's still more than half a bag
Yeah.
left, and it's been like more than 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll say too, chamomile is wonderful for kids. So like if my daughter has a tummy ache, she's actually trained at this point that she just automatically asks me for chamomile tea and it helps every single time. Now, if there's something really like legitimately medically wrong with your child, it might take more than chamomile tea to correct the ship. But I'm saying for the occasional tummy ache kind of thing, it is phenomenal for that, to a point where I usually travel with a little bit of chamomile just in case she ever needs it when we're visiting family in Buffalo or something. So yeah, humble old chamomile. Look at that. And again, like, you get $25 worth. You've got a pound. It'll last you from now until doomsday.
Forever.
It's pretty cost-effective thing to do versus all of the bajillions of dollars of antimicrobials and biofilm disruptors and leaky gut healer uppers that you probably have in that supplement graveyard. So pretty cost-effective to do. Yeah. Well, hold on. Let me look at comments one more time, I think, and then we'll kind of start wrapping up, at least for your guys' portion. I might linger a little bit longer and do let's see, why can't I chat? Well, so we're broadcasting this call. I invited these guys on, but I am checking the chat box a little bit here on YouTube. I know somebody was confused about that. Let's see. Yeah, some of these might be more for me. Hold on, this one. When 2K this probiotic is, how long should we wait and see results? I'm going to pause briefly and just share this because it actually pertains to something I teach you guys in FODMAP Freedom. And I think I've told both of you guys this, but we'll see. Probiotics. So here, I'll tell you how I do it, and then I'll tell you the correct way to do it. It is what it is. Let me ask you this. So did either of you guys end up finding a prokinetic or a probiotic that was helpful for you when you did the speed dating as part of FODMAP Freedom?
Not me.
All at this point?
No.
Okay, no for you. So you're, and I say this with love, but you're in the minority. Most people, I think it's like 93% of people find at least one prokinetic that really helps. So I'm sorry to hear that you're in that minority, Joanne. How about you, Christian? Do you remember now? And are you still taking whatever you found helpful?
No, I tried. I mean, I didn't actually get to the probiotics, but for the Prokinetics, I tried all of them. I did find some that helped a little bit, but I don't think I found one that was like stuck out to me that was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah. And at that point, like I said, it's more cost effective to do the chamomile. If you find that the experience and the routine of it is really nice and it's part of your wind down routine now, and maybe it's helping with motility a bit. So I think you ended up finding something.
It's more like food based, like making sure I'm eating like cooked vegetables instead of raw vegetables, making sure it's like this much food instead of this much food, trying to help like the mobility thing. But
yeah, that makes sense. Actually, you just reminded me of somebody. I think it was in this recent class in the fall. We had somebody, and I will gently tease this poor person here if they ever watch this recording. But basically, we had a student, and in the beginning, he had reached out, and he was, if I recall, he was a little bit like, oh my God, panicky about it. But it was very pressing. He needed to talk to us because he said, my mood and my energy level changes like very, very drastically in response to when I eat. And he was hypothesizing all of these theories of like, could it be histamine? Could it be candida? Could it be SIBO? Could it be fermentation? Could it be this? And he was going on all of these tangents about what it could be. And then Stephanie and I were talking about this because we talk about you all behind your back all day, every day. Like our days are consumed just talking about you guys. And I pointed out to Stephanie when she was reading me this email, and I said, correct me if I'm wrong, but this particular student had told us that he eats one meal a day. Did he not? Oh, yes. And we looked back at the notes. Yes, he eats one meal a day. Of course, your brain is going to feel different before and after you eat your one meal a day. Like, yeah, duh. I'm not saying this to be a jerk, but like, that's to be expected. You go from starvation state to way over full in a matter of like 30 minutes, and you do that to yourself every damn day. Like, just can we get you eating 2 or 3 meals a day and give it a week or 2 or 3 and just see if that takes effect? And spoiler alert, that ended up helping him tremendously. So all of like the fatigue and brain fog and like, oh, I feel like I'm not digesting my food because it's sitting in my gullet like a brick of lead. It's like, you just filled your stomach too much, bro. Like, it's not anything fancier than that. You just need to eat smaller meals and more frequently. Yeah. You looked like you had something to weigh in on that, Christian. Did you want to comment?
I remember at its worst, like when I tried to like not, I didn't want to do the 3 meals yet, just because I was like, I love eating voluminous. Like, I just like eating a big meal at one time. But like, there was a point I was eating probably half a pound of sweet potatoes in one meal, and I was just like, no wonder I feel like it's not going through, just because like that's a lot of sweet potatoes. Like,
It's a lot to process all at once.
yeah. And then I kind of like, instead of doing all sweet potatoes, I do like a little sweet potato, a little butternut squash, similar but a little different, some other roasted veggies, and it's like I'm not hungry. I'm not full afterwards, but like I'm also like not starving. I'm just like I'm satiated enough where it's just like this is what it's like to not feel disgusting full all the time, and I know I'll be hungry for my next meal.
Yeah.
And like that's helped like so much for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I still hit the overfull, point on the fullness meter when I go to the occasional buffet. Side note, there's an all-you-can-eat seafood buffet on the Outer Banks in North Carolina. It is the greatest thing in the universe. If you like seafood, it's the greatest thing in the universe. So, like we all have our moments, or like Thanksgiving dinner where we just eat too much. But again, it's like, if you think about how icky you feel and how like sleepy and overfull and just bleh you feel after a gigantic Thanksgiving dinner, for some reason, it's really trendy right now to do that to yourself every day and eat one or maybe two gigantic meals a day. And it doesn't compute. Like, I kind of understand how we got to this point, but I also don't. The pendulum swingeth. And before you know it, in my lifetime, in my career, we will go back to the 6 small meals a day thing as a recommendation that's popular. Mark my words. It might take 10 or 20 years to get us back there, but mark my words, the pendulum just goes back and forth. One day carbs are evil, then protein is evil, then fat is evil, then we go back to the carbs, and humans are silly gooses, I'll tell you that. But anyhow, sorry to the poor person who asked the probiotic question, because I just went way off tangent. Briefly. Okay. So as part of FODMAP Freedom, I send these guys 1 week's supplies of all of the different herbal prokinetics that I can get my hot little hands on. And then some like betaine HCl and bile and some other stuff too. And I have them go through that speed dating during the program for the most part, because there's like 9 different products, I think, for the Prokinetics. So it takes a while. Then at the end of the program, or shortly after graduation, then that's when I send probiotics. And I do this in a really kind of ass backwards way, but I do feel that there's some benefit to the students that I work with. I send 2 capsules of a whole bunch of different products for probiotics. And I just have them go through rapid fire. 2 days, make some notes, switch product. 2 days, make some notes, switch product. That is not scientifically founded whatsoever. So this is the way I do it. I'm going to tell you why in a minute. If you really want to be a good citizen scientist and you really want to give a probiotic a fair fighting chance, I would say you need to take it for at least a month. Most research studies, when they look at probiotics and they try to assess if they work or not, most studies will give those participants the probiotic for like 1 to 2 months. So like 4, 6, or 8 weeks is pretty typical. Sometimes you have a hump that you have to get over where a probiotic can make you feel a little bit worse initially, or like mess with you somehow. And then if you push through to the other side, then you start to feel a benefit. So if you really want to be truly scientific and science-based, you would do a probiotic for at least a month before bailing ship. Now, the reason I do the rapid fire testing, and again, I don't remember if I shared this with you guys specifically, is that I find a lot of people, maybe the majority of people in the SIBO space, are terrified of probiotics, or at the bare minimum, they don't think that they're going to work for them. And so to make a recommendation to take probiotics to a group of people who I know damn well are terrified of probiotics, like that's kind of a tall order. And frankly, I think if I just told people, go buy a bottle of probiotics, it'll be good for you, I think that very few people would take me up on that. So I do the little weird speed dating thing with probiotics just so we can get a really rough and dirty sense. Can you tolerate at least 2 days worth of this product? If there's one that you super hate, just don't buy a bottle of that one. That's off the list now. But usually I can prove to people doing this that there are a variety of probiotics that you at least feel neutrally about. And you're not going to buy a bottle, take one pill, hate it with every fiber of your being, and then throw it in the supplement graveyard. So I think that that has some value. So, it's a really quick screener to find the ones that you're going to hate. And it's sort of a fun way for me to prove to people that you might actually tolerate more probiotics than you even realize. So that's why I do it the way I do it. But if you want to be scientific, I would say take a probiotic for at least a month. Maybe longer if you have constipation, I might add. So yeah. But anyway, guys, I want to wrap up because I want to be, cognizant of your time. I know it was so nice that you guys came out here and did this with me. I guess I'll just open the floor for closing remarks. And do you have any advice for people who are watching right now and like they feel stuck? They feel like they've tried everything and nothing works for them, and they're still trying to heal their gut. And that beyond just join FODMAP Freedom, because it would be lovely if I could help all these folks, but I know that I won't be able to help everybody out there. So any advice that you might have, like things that maybe they could take away from this live stream. Joanne, do you want to go first, and then we'll kick it over to Christian?
Again, what I had reiterated is that stay off social media support groups and the researching, only because there's so much conflicting information out there. You don't know what's real and what isn't real. And it just will make you feel more stressed, more overwhelmed, and more alone. That's my advice. Stay off of those sites. Again, from someone that's done as much research, and I'm talking months of many, many hours during the day, lots of notes, following lots of treatments and doctors. It all came back to FODMAP Freedom. It's the only program that I thought made sense. And financially, there's other programs out there, but FODMAP Freedom offers a lot of support even after the program is over. There's options. And that was so important, at least for me, because am I totally healed? No, I'm not. But I'd say I'm 75% there. And that is unbelievable compared to what I came from.
And considering what your body's been through, that's unreal.
I mean, I couldn't go out socially, and I didn't realize until I couldn't do things like going out to eat or having a drink. A lot of the socialization is around food, and I just felt like I was in a bubble and the world was going on without me. And again, it wasn't until I joined this program that I felt that I had hope for the first time. So I don't know. I just, all that research all that time to me was wasted. I didn't feel like I was living. I was just existing. And I'm very grateful to the program and to you. I'm getting my life back. And that life is too short to waste. It really is.
It is. And, I think that might sound easier said than done to some people. But I'll propose this too. Even if you don't join FODMAP Freedom, guys, you could do a little experiment just for kicks, just for funsies. Take 100 days off of the researching. You could do that as part of what I mandate in FODMAP Freedom, or you could do it on your own as an experiment, but set yourself a reminder 100 days from now that you are allowed to join your Reddit threads again, and just go through, unfollow all of the groups, all of the Reddit threads, ban yourself from using PubMed, unsubscribe from my YouTube channel. I'm going to be that bold. I'm going to tell you to unsubscribe from me. Nobody on the history of YouTube has ever done this, by the way, I'm sure. But unsubscribe from all your shit. Give yourself a breather for 100 days. I'm not saying it's going to be the miracle cure and this is going to be it for you. You might feel a need to do some research when you come back out of it, but I think it might make a bigger difference than a lot of people realize. That's why I mandate it as part of my program, at least. So, and I try to make up for it with a lot of support. So I'm not just taking away this crutch and then leaving you hobbling around with a broken leg. Like I'm going to give you a different kind of crutch in the sense of like support and Q&As and, the guidance from me and my team. So that's the nice thing is I get to replace it with something better when I work with you. But yeah, I think that's good advice, Joanne. I'll be curious to see if anybody does this as an experiment on their own. How about you, Christian? Any advice for the folks at home watching this live stream? Anything that maybe they could try to implement or do right now?
Yeah, like for some advice, it's like this is more than just like a program of telling you like what to take or like what foods to eat. It's more of like a mindset change. At least for me, it was a mindset change that like something that I had to like go through in my head. It's like I'm not going back. I'm not doing this to get to back to a state of where I was previously. Because in my head, I want to get back to a point where I could eat all this food and just like live on my merry life. But like it's more of a set of like changing my lifestyle and rather
Mm,
than like setting a timeline of like, hey, I'm gonna do this for 3 months and then I'll go back to normal in my life. Now it's just
yeah.
like I'll do this for 3 months and then the rest of my life. And
Mm,
like I feel like that's helped a lot just because especially coming from like years and years of kind of like an unhealthy relationship with food and like wanting to eat everything and anything and like
mm,
feeling like shit completely for like most of those times and like digestion was not good and then realizing like you can have normal bowel movements and feel good and not have to feel dizzy all the time and like
mm,
you don't have to revert back to that so like having that mind shift change like helped a lot um and also, I want to mention, like, I remember when I was in the program, each time we met, like, I kept on reverting back to the what you call the unsexy basics of like making sure you have the nutrition and sleep and stuff. Just because, like, I mean, granted, I do take some herbal still. I still take some digestive enzymes and other
mm,
digestive support still, but the unsexy basics have helped me so much. So, like, making sure you have enough macronutrients. On top of that, micronutrients are just as important. So making sure you have all your bases covered, like helped me so much. And like that's something people could do now, just like going to Chronometer, even the free version. I still use it now.
great.
Making sure you get as close as you can to 100% of everything
Mm,
and see what that does for you. Because like I think that in itself has been the biggest game changer for me.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Again, I sometimes chuckle because I feel like I'm not gatekeeping at all.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm doing the opposite of gatekeeping. Like I'm very vocal. I tell people all the time, please download Chronometer. Please use it. You don't need to join my program to analyze your nutrition and understand your nutrition. We have apps and free tools to do this. And I feel like not a lot of people take me up on that offer, but just dialing in your nutrition. Like I kind of drive the point home, especially in week 6 when we do the deep dive on these different nutrients. And I make a case for why even humble niacin or riboflavin or potassium might be important for your gut. But really, at the end of the day, if you just use something like Chronometer, get a good assessment on your nutrition and start to understand what vitamins and minerals you need more of, and start making an effort to get those things from food, not supplements necessarily, but food, that's going to cure a lot of what ails you. And again, it's like the most unsexy, basic kind of foundational stuff that actually does the heavy lifting. And then if you need a little bit of quercetin for your histamine thing, or if you need a little bit of an antimicrobial for your fungal thing, or whatever it might be, you can take that and it's going to be way more effective at a way lower dose than you would have needed before. And the effect is going to be longer lasting. Like, what's the point of feeling better with an antimicrobial if you're going to feel like crap again right as soon as you discontinue it? Like, if we're trying to move things and we're trying to change your physiology, we want these changes to be permanent. And that's where I see a lot of people get stuck is like they do things and it makes them feel better temporarily. And then they just keep hammering the snot out of those things. And there's
Mhm.
no strategy for like, how can I make this good effect that I'm seeing last longer or last for my entire life? And again, it's those unsexy foundations that are going to do it for you 99.9% of the time, I should say. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, Huge stuff. Well, thank you guys. I really, really appreciate you coming on here, sharing your wisdom. Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, like I said, you guys were a good pair because there was like more of the classic SIBO kind of case and the classic dysbiosis kind of case. But I think we made some really good points that would be applicable to probably damn near everybody watching this live stream, honestly, between the two of you. So I appreciate your time so much. Thank you all. I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to stay here on the Zoom call and I'm just going to go through some of the chat box a little bit and see if I can pick a handful of questions to answer. So if you guys want to stick around for my musings, you're welcome, but you're also not obligated to do so. You can log off now. I mean, you guys have heard my ramblings many times over at this point in FODMAP Freedom. So, but thank you again so much for attending.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having
It
me.
was a pleasure seeing both of
Bye,
you.
Christian.
Bye.
Yeah, my babies, my ducklings. All right, Mama Duck out. Let's see what kind of comments we've got over here, guys. Oh goodness. Let's see. Okay, hold on. There's somebody commenting a lot of all right, some I don't fully understand here. Let's see. I'm going to scroll back a little bit. So guys, just so you know, I won't get to all of the Q&A here, but I'll try to hit on at least a handful of them. Let's see. Let's see. Talked about probiotics a little bit. We talked about how to feed good bacteria a bit. Is SIBO and gastritis related? I have excessive burping and stomach discomfort. Just wondering if these are related. Maybe for some people, I could see that maybe being a thing. A little hard to say for, what is going to apply to you and like your root causes, but I would say solid maybe. Yes, and then so it looks like we have one commenter who's commenting quite a bit about the price of my program. So basically what ends up happening, guys, is that you get the core version of the program where we're really holding your hand and going through each of the lessons is about 12 weeks. And you get one new lesson every week for those 12 weeks. And then after you've had a little bit of time to digest that material, so to speak, we come and we meet for the Q&As. And there are 2 Q&As per week with my nutritionist who works for me, Stephanie. And there's 2 Q&As with me every week. So you get to kind of digest that material, talk about how to apply it in your life. That's the basis of the program, is the 3 months. We do offer ongoing support for students at no extra charge for a full 9 months after that. So you get some sort of support with us for 12 months. Also, we have something that's optional afterwards called the FODMAP Flock. And that's basically like the alumni Q&A time. And we do 2 of those meetings per month right now with the hopes of doing more in the future. But yeah, so the FODMAP Flock, that's also free of charge for 6 months. And if you want to continue it after that, I think it's like $14.99 a month or something for that membership. But really, you basically get a year worth of support out of FODMAP Freedom. It's the core curriculum where you're doing like Q&As every week and you're doing new material and learning every week. That's the 12-week part of the program. And yes, the base for that is $3K. Let's see. Can we tough it out with wind to get used to fiber? Yeah, there is some truth to that being necessary. I think the studies I've seen indicate that basically like your gas level and farting, if I may, that's going to start normalizing after, I think it's like 2 to 3 weeks, maybe 4 for some people. So yeah, if you could increase your fiber consumption and your prebiotic consumption, I would say give it about a month and the farting should get better and the gas should get a bit better. Let's see when to take, okay, I answered that one. Yes, here's where I was asking about feeding good bacteria. So yes, fiber, polyphenols, apple cider vinegar. I don't know if that's really going to feed good bacteria so much. I'm not sure if that's what this person was getting at. Apple cider vinegar can help with postprandial, meaning post-meal blood sugar spikes. And it can help maybe stimulate digestive juices and stomach acid a bit. So it can help with digestion as well. I don't know if it necessarily will feed good bacteria. It might, I just might not be aware of it. Let's see. Yeah, so somebody pointed out that a lot of fibers are higher in FODMAP and bloating might be an issue for some people, yes. But the goal, if you have normal digestion, normal physiology, and a normal microbiome, the goal is that you should be able to eat the high fiber, high FODMAP foods out the wazoo and feel fine and not get bloating from that. Let's see. Let's see. Jeremy says, I'm in New Jersey. I'm curious about the program. Yeah, so I kind of answered this inadvertently before, but I'll kind of go back to it anyway. So basically, it's not Zoom. It's not a totally different platform. So when you join the program, you get access to like a course library, and that's where the lessons are going to be housed every day or every week when we're going through those. And for the record, you get lifetime access to that once you join, and you actually get access to all future iterations and future bonuses and things that I create as part of the FODMAP Freedom Suite. So you have like the library that's housed in one area, and then there's a FODMAP Freedom community, and that's where you could kind of go back and forth with your peers. It's somewhat reminiscent of like a Facebook group, but it's a bit different, or it's like a feed. I used to house the FODMAP Freedom group in a Facebook group, but then it started feeling really silly that I tell people to get out of the Facebook groups and get off of social media and like kind of get away from that in their life, and then to bring them back onto Facebook to go in the FODMAP Freedom group. So I parted ways with Facebook as a hosting platform for that group a couple of years ago, and now it's its own thing. But yeah, you can join the calls either from your browser. It just opens in your browser. You don't have to download Zoom or anything. Or you can actually do it from your smartphone. There is a smartphone app for the library and for the community as well. Let's see. And then, like I said, you get one new topic, one new like chunk of material every week. We digest it together in the Q&As, and we basically repeat that cycle for 12 weeks until you have learned all of the things. And then we will give you some degree of ongoing support, whether that be email or if you want to join the flock, there's some ongoing support after that as well. Let's see. Methane SIBO, and I believe the reason I got my emo is constipation. Is this possible? It's hard to say which came first, the chicken or the egg. I don't think constipation in and of itself would cause high methanogen overgrowth. I think that there was probably a shared root cause, like inadequate fiber consumption, that would have caused both the constipation and the methane overgrowth. That's my hunch, at least. I don't think that just, slow transit constipation kind of stuff, I don't think that that would necessarily cause emo in and of itself. Let's see. If you eat small quantities of fiber a few times a day, you will get used to it. Large quantities might be more difficult. Yeah, I think that's largely true, Kelsey. And yeah, psyllium could be good. What I will say too is that I think that we sometimes forget in our gut health quest that it is perfectly normal for people to get some gas and some bloating at various times in their life. So for example, I forget, I've talked about this publicly somewhere, I don't remember where though. I love Costco so much. I love it so much. And I remember this was like 2 years ago. My husband and I went to Costco and we bought a bag of avocados. So there was like 6 or 7 of them in one bag. And of course, they all ripened on the same day. So all of a sudden, I was left with like 7 avocados that I needed to use immediately before they rot. So I made a gigantic batch of guacamole. And I was so excited. And my husband ate some of it. Like, he's a champion. He ate probably 2 avocados worth. And I was left with all of this guacamole still. And my daughter didn't touch it for whatever reason. I brought some over to the next door neighbors and gave them like 2 avocados worth of guacamole. But I still had a crap ton of guacamole. And A, I love it so much. And B, I'm a cheapskate. I refuse to throw it away. So I ate like 4 avocados worth of guacamole all in one sitting that night. And it wasn't until a little bit later, we were doing family movie night and we were sitting there watching the movie, and it occurred to me, oh, I'm quite bloated and gassy, and like I feel some discomfort in my abdomen. And then it occurred to me, well, yeah, duh, you ate like 4 or 5 times the appropriate amount of guacamole. Like, of course you feel a little bit funny. And, I felt a little bit gassy and a little bit distended from that for a couple of hours. And by the time I woke up the next morning, it was completely gone and I went on with my life. Similarly, I want to remind all of you guys of a beautiful song, Beans, Beans, the magical fruit. The more you eat, the more you toot. The more you toot, the better you feel. Now you're ready for another meal, right? Like, we as a society came up with that sing song for a reason. And it's because there are some foods that are just intrinsically a little bit gassy, and a lot of them happen to be high FODMAP. So if you eat a crap load of beans or a whole ton of cabbage, or in my case, a whole ton of guacamole, there's going to be some limit to normal human physiology where even a normal healthy person is going to be gassy and uncomfortable from that. So just bear that in mind, because I have met some people where we had a student in the last group, for example, and we got talking about fiber. I don't remember how it came up, but he was like, oh no, I do good on fiber. I eat 8 peaches every day. I was like, wow, that's a lot. Why do you do that? So anyway, just so you know, like, sometimes it's pathological and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's just, this would be expected for any normal human being. I don't know if that really was helpful. I hope it was. I kind of rambled there for a minute, but yeah, I think absurdly large quantities of prebiotic is probably going to be gassy for everybody, myself included. Let's see. Why would probiotics make my gas and diarrhea worse? A lot of reasons for that. We are in the infancy of understanding the gut microbiome in general, let alone something like SIBO or Candida or leaky gut. So I don't really know the answer. I have a video on this channel about probiotic side effects, and I speculate that a lot of why probiotics don't agree with a person have to do with how they're stimulating the person's immune system. So it could be that it was just not a good match for like your immune system and what it needed at that time. Beyond that, I don't know if I could really speculate because, again, I don't think the research is really there yet. So I don't know if we have a way of knowing that. Let's see. Do you know about oxalates? I'm not an oxalate expert. What I will tell you is I used to have very high oxalates on an organic acids test. Actually, I think that my number was the highest I've ever seen when I was doing oats. So a little bragging moment there. And initially I was concerned about it. And then it sort of occurred to me that I noticed this when I was coming out of a much more paleo-centric phase with my diet. And I was doing almond flour, everything. Because, grains are evil, but almonds are fine. I was doing almond everything. Almond flour scones, almond flour cookies, almond flour tortillas, almond flour cake. And I don't even know. I was doing almond flour for every damn meal of my life. And I was doing green spinach smoothies as a breakfast item almost every day. So for me, the oxalate problem dissipated after I went back to a more diverse, normal seeming diet. And I started eating grains and carbs again. And so just kind of reducing the high oxalate foods out of my diet and getting back to a more balanced diet was what ended up helping me tremendously. But I did go down a rabbit hole for a period of time thinking that it was a candida thing and it was something that I needed to treat. And that's what I observed with myself. And I have seen that with several other patients or students as well. But beyond that, I'm not really an oxalate expert. Let's see. Could I comment on the most common effective over-the-counter prokinetics, especially the common active ingredients? Totally. So I have a video that I posted on this channel right around the new year. It was right around the new year last year. So if you search on my channel for the word Prokinetic or like Prokinetic 2024, you'll pull it up. I track data on my students and my patients, and I write down in a giant spreadsheet who likes which one, and then I just kind of tally up the numbers. Statistically speaking, the number one product that most people end up picking is called Motility Activator, and it's just 2 ingredients. It's artichoke and ginger, and that's it. It's a very simple formula. So that is usually the one that I would recommend that you start with, just because statistically there's a higher likelihood that you're going to like that one. There are plenty of people who fall in love with the other 8 Prokinetics that I send out. And that's why I don't just send my students a bottle of Motility Activator and call it a day. I actually do make these annoying little bit. I hand pack all of these little baggies of Prokinetics and ship them to each and every student. And I have them try all of them because I really don't know which one you as an individual is going to like. There's no correlation whatsoever with diagnoses. So it's not like, oh, the emo people like this one and the hydrogen sulfide people like this one and the candida people like this one. Nope. No correlation with diagnoses. And there's also no correlation with symptoms. I cannot tell you how many times we have seen people come to the Q&As and they're like, I found the Prokinetic for me. And two different people fell in love with the same Prokinetic. One person formerly had constipation and one person formerly had diarrhea. And they both found that that Prokinetic helped normalize their bowel movements. So again, it's not like, oh, the constipated people like this one, the bloated people like this one, the diarrhea people like this one. No pattern. It is a total crapshoot. And that's why to this day, I hand pack all of those Prokinetic packets and I mail them to my students because I really don't know what you're going to like until you try them. But again, like number wise, if you don't want to, or if you don't have the ability to do the Prokinetic speed dating as part of FODMAP Freedom, if I was a betting woman, I would probably try Motility Activator. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not going to comment on the oxalates being silent but deadly. I've seen people allude to that or say that, and I think it really depends on the context of the person, but broadly speaking, I would disagree with that statement. Let's see. I talked about probiotics a bit. In many of your videos, you talk about how many tests, including the GI map, are not really validating. Would you say it's not worth it at all to get tested then? Largely, yes. As a general rule of thumb, and this is really hard for me to say, by the way, I fell in love with functional medicine in part because the testing was really cool. I thought it was awesome that we could finally get answers and understand every little molecule of the human body. And I thought if I just learned the biochemistry and learned the pathways and learned how to use these tests, I thought it was really empowering as a clinician and for the patient to get this kind of data and understand the body in this way. That being said, I have come full circle as somebody who once really loved functional testing, and I've now come to appreciate that a lot of this testing is at the bare minimum not researched and not validated. And at the worst, some of them are really, truly bad. So I sometimes will allude to it on this channel, but I did split sample testing with the GI map years ago, and I published my findings here on YouTube, and it was egregious. Like the results were wildly different from one to the other. I did a video here on YouTube and the company's response was to threaten to sue me. So I had to remove the videos from YouTube. So I did not find that they were consistent within themselves when I did split sample testing, which makes me very much question the clinical utility of such a test. But also the fact that their response was to threaten to sue me and I had to remove the videos from YouTube makes me not trust them as a company. But as I mentioned before, I don't use the oat test. I don't use SIBO breath testing. There's just way too many false positives, and it's like the wild, wild west. These companies are all too happy to make a profit off of your desire for answers. But as far as like how validated and accurate they are, it's iffy at the absolute best, shall we say. So I would say as a general rule of thumb, if it's a test that your normal doctor can order for you, so like TSH, red blood cells, white blood cells, liver enzymes, an H. pylori stool antigen test from LabCorp. You know, if it's something that your primary care or your GI doctor can order for you, I think I would go ahead and trust that and think that that's worthwhile. If it's something that only a functional doctor or a naturopath can order for you and nobody else seems to know what to do with it, I would be very skeptical. Let's see. And actually, as a quick pause here, there's this really big ego problem in functional medicine. And I noticed this years ago too, but there's this really big ego trip, and you'll hear people in functional medicine seminars regularly say things like, oh, I can't believe those clinical dinosaurs over at the primary care or the GI office won't run a GI map or a oat test or whatever the case may be. Oh, they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what's really current. We are at the cutting edge of science. We are at the cutting edge of clinical practice and they are dinosaurs and they are missing out. How could they not know how valuable an oat test is? And it's like, when you get talking to people in like conventional medical practices, they know about a lot of these tests. There's a reason why they're not ordering them. And a big reason is because they're bullshit and they know it. So don't let, the naturopaths and the functional doctors fool you in with this rhetoric of like, only we know what's cutting edge and good and valuable. You have to do our $400 test. Like, there's a lot wrapped up in that. Let's see. Okay. Okay. How would you determine whether, if there's no point in getting tested, how would you determine whether one has dysbiosis or SIBO or even a parasite? Well, again, I think going back to the root cause conversation would be really valuable. So again, like taking our guest from earlier, for example, Joanne was on a proton pump inhibitor, an acid suppressor for 30 years. I bet you $1 that she really, truly had SIBO from that, right? Like we do have research that suggests that there's a correlation between PPI use, especially if it's for a longer duration of time, and SIBO occurrence. So looking at the root cause and the timeline of what was going on with her, I do think that that was more of a SIBO situation. For Christian, his whole story was, I had to have antibiotics and then more antibiotics, and then I had another round of antibiotics, and it was like the straw that broke the camel's back, and then everything went to crap after that. So to me, that doesn't sound so much like a SIBO situation. That sounds more like a dysbiosis thing. So I think that you can get a lot of this information just by going through your health history and your story and like analyzing your root causes this way. I have quite a few videos on here on this YouTube channel about root causes and kind of how to evaluate them and look at them. But I think the big thing I would tell you is that think back to when your symptoms first started or when they got notably worse. And think back to, was there a point where you felt pretty good, pretty normal, pretty healthy, and then one day, like, you didn't feel good and normal and healthy? And if so, start looking for root causes in like the 6 or maybe 12 months surrounding that time period. And you'll probably start picking up on, oh, that was a period of super high stress at work. I had a lot of antibiotics. I had to take a PPI. I had a surgery, the death of a loved one, or some sort of trauma. My sleep was shit. I had a baby and my hormones were crazy and I was not sleeping and I was super stressed. I went through menopause. There's going to be something that stands out to you if you look around 6 months around that period where things seem to change. And you could do this multiple times. Like I said, you could do this for the time period when your symptoms started, and you could do this for any time period where your symptoms got noticeably worse. But I think that that will tell you a lot of what you need to know. If you're really jonesing for a stool test, the one that I occasionally recommend people do is called Ombre, O-M-B-R-E. It's based here in the United States. If you're overseas, you could look at a similar company called Biomesight, Biomesigt, I think, Biomesight. They are both 16S stool tests. They're cheap. They're like $100 a pop, which is nice. It's not going to tell you if you have a parasite, and it's not going to tell you about Candida, but it'll at least give you kind of an initial look at what the dysbiosis looks like in there. And sometimes that could point you in the right direction. But honestly, I'm at a point where I go based off of history and symptoms and more of a root cause analysis for the vast majority of my students. And I very rarely even recommend doing this kind of stool testing. But if you're going to do one, I would do 16S. It's cheap. It's what most researchers use when they're analyzing the gut microbiome. So if you're trying to look at like research on the gut microbiome and you're trying to compare that to what you've had done, it becomes more of an apples to apples comparison instead of an apples to orange comparison. So if you're going to do it, I think that that's probably the way to go. Let's see. Let's see. Can we get more on small intestine microbiome specifically? Videos. Yeah, I think that would actually be fun. I think one of the ones that I've got on my very long list of what I want to record here for this channel is to talk about some of the aspirate tests where they actually go in and they suck out some of the bacteria from the small bowel, and they analyze that. I think that would be a good topic for this channel as well. I talk about it in FODMAP Freedom, but it's just a matter of bringing it over here to the YouTube side. Let's see. I got exocrine pancreatic insufficiency and SIBO. Took some antibiotics, still bloated, yellow stools. Yellow stools can be a bile acid malabsorption issue. That might not be 100% because of the exocrine pancreatic insufficiency. Beyond that, it's a little bit hard to say if I don't know your story and your root causes and stuff, but I would actually do just a really quick Google search on bile acid malabsorption and see if that seems to stand out to you. Let's see. Noelle says, I wanted to start lifting and gaining weight this year, but I have to overeat in order to get my calories. Do you have any advice? Yeah. So like we were saying earlier, it's going to be easier to get calories in with 3 square meals a day instead of trying to load all of your calories into 1 or 2 enormous meals. Christian was pretty adamant about that. And I would agree. So I would say 3 square meals a day and gradually making each of those meals bigger. Keep in mind that the size of your stomach is what it is. And if you are trying to train your body to be able to take in more food at a time, you actually might need to give it a couple of weeks to literally stretch out your stomach a bit and increase your capacity for taking in larger quantities of food in one sitting. So some of it's going to be just diligence and patience. The other thing is if you've lost weight and that's part of your story here with tummy problems, you might just want to focus on eating more and getting yourself better nourished first and hold off on the weightlifting really intensely. It's harder to get enough calories if you're putting yourself in a caloric deficit because of working out. And like, I have a bachelor's degree in exercise science. I will tell you, I was a personal trainer. I was an athlete. Exercise is fantastic for you, and I would definitely recommend that you exercise. But like I said, if you've lost weight and you're trying to regain weight and you're finding it difficult to get enough calories to do that with your workouts, you might actually want to step down on your workouts for the time being and focus on just getting the extra calories and putting on a little bit of weight. And then once you feel like that's going smoothly, then in maybe a month or 2 or 3, then you could start bringing in more weightlifting and harder workouts. So that's a consideration that you might want to think about. Let's see. Question, Doc, have you found any usefulness in doing seed cycling for hormone balance? Not really. I've recommended it to women before. I haven't noticed anything really like impressive from it. I will admit though, most people, understandably, are not patient enough to work with somebody like me and then only do seed cycling for like 3 to 6 months to see if it's working. Usually we would be doing some like herbs and supplements and other dietary stuff and lifestyle stuff in the same time frame of doing the seed cycling. So it's really hard for me to say what could be attributable to that versus all the other stuff I tend to do with patients and students. So that being said, I don't think I've seen anything like miraculous from it, but if you want to try it out for funsies, I don't think it would hurt. Let's see. Dr. Pimentel recently shared that they are working on delayed release NAC along with rifaximin, and that apparently improved significantly the eradication. Thoughts? I like NAC. I mean, NAC is a bit of a biofilm disruptor. Glutathione is phenomenal, guys. If you haven't watched my half-hour-long glutathione deep dive here on YouTube, you might want to check that out. I laughed because when I filmed that video and I edited it and I got it to 30 minutes, I remember thinking to myself, oh, this video is going to bomb. 30 minutes is way too long. I am asking too much of people to pay attention to one video for that long. And then it actually performed well. Like people ended up liking that video and getting a lot out of it, I think. But yeah, you could learn a little bit more. I think that glutathione might be part of the reason for that. And, you know, it's anti-inflammatory and immune modulating properties. I think NAC in and of itself is anti-inflammatory. And also it seems to have some biofilm disrupting qualities. But again, you know, if you're just throwing in some NAC with the rifaximin, I think you're still probably in the mindset of, oh, I just have to kill and eradicate the SIBO and disrupt their biofilms, and that's the answer. And I am more in the camp of wanting to examine the reasons why the person might have gotten SIBO and the reasons why they might still be stuck now. And like, what is it about you, your life, your environment, your microbiome, your body, your nutrition that allowed the SIBO to take foothold? And I think that's where the majority of the work needs to come from. If you do antimicrobials and biofilm disruptors, that should only be maximum 5 or 10% of your whole journey, in my opinion. The other 90+% is that unsexy, basic foundational stuff that I kept talking about with these guys. But yeah, it's interesting though. The SIBO yogurt, I've had some people report back that that was helpful for them or that they liked it. So I haven't tried it personally myself, but I have had some people like the SIBO yogurt recipe. Yeah. Hold on, shoot. Let's see. Thanks for all the info and work. You're welcome. Would you comment on the most effective OTC Prokinetics? Oh, no, I already answered that one. Okay. Motility activator. Can I please talk about mild C. diff? Can people do the same SIBO protocol to get rid of it? Ooh. C. diff is tricky. C. diff is the ultimate, like, ooh, you killed too many of the bad guys and it allowed a good guy to take hold. I will say, I think any sort of dysbiosis protocol would be the right idea with C. diff. I don't think I would necessarily lead into a SIBO protocol for C. diff. C. diff is like the most egregious version of dysbiosis. It's not a SIBO related thing. At least my understanding for most people. So I would probably think more along the lines of like a dysbiosis protocol rather than a SIBO protocol. And that might help. I don't know. It depends, like mild C. diff. I don't know. Like, what does that look like? If it's like, oh, I did a functional stool test and they showed that I had C. diff present, but it's not an active infection, then yeah, I'd probably do like a dysbiosis sort of protocol. You know, if you identified it on like a GI map or a BiomeFX or something and it's there, but it's not an infection, maybe that's what this person is talking about. If you got conventional testing from like LabCorp or Quest and they told you you have a C. diff infection, you might need to really treat it with conventional stuff, even antibiotics or like FMT, because C. diff can be pretty pesky to get rid of. But I'm assuming this person probably did like a functional test and the microbe was noted, but it's not an overt infection. That's my guess. Why do doctors still don't do small intestinal aspiration? It's very difficult and costly to do. That's the primary reason. Also, I think, frankly, it's unnecessary for the vast majority of cases. But it's very hard to get the tube all the way down into the middle or lower part of the small intestine, retrieve the bacteria, and then snake it all the way back through your intestines, your stomach, and your esophagus without contaminating it with bacteria. So that's the basis of it. It's an invasive test. You have to do it with a scope. And it's difficult to do in a way that does not contaminate the sample and lead to false results. And it's unnecessary for the vast majority of people. So those are the three reasons. It's interesting though, when you get into like the aspirate research and like how they're trying to improve upon that, it is interesting. Do I think there's any side effects from using gas masks long term? I don't know. I actually don't know. That's a good question. I haven't really looked at that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not even going to try to hypothesize because I truly don't know the answer to that. Let's see. Oh, Noelle said, thank you for the advice. I'll definitely listen. You're the only person who's helped me feel better. Your advice was to get in my vitamins and minerals, and I realized I was deficient in D3 and magnesium. Oh, I'm so glad that my stuff has helped you, Noelle. That really like warms my heart. I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, keep plucking away. I mean, again, like guys, I don't gatekeep. I really tell you everything here on this YouTube channel. It's just if you want it to be a more concise, thought out journey, and you want the support and the coaching, that's what FODMAP Freedom is for. But it's not like I have a magic supplement that I only talk about in FODMAP Freedom and I keep it a secret from all of the rest of you until you pay for my course. Like I really don't gatekeep. But again, it's hard to be totally objective about your own situation. And it's hard when you don't have like medical training or nutritional training yourself. So the coaching is really what I think is most valuable about FODMAP Freedom. So the opportunity to come ask questions in the live Q&As and the ongoing support via email, like that's where it's really at, in my opinion. The video lectures are stupendous, obviously, but that's not where it's at, in my opinion, as far as like my coaching program goes. Let's see. Do I treat patients with chronic GERD and some form of mild to moderate intermediate gastritis? No, I've made a point in more recent years, as a matter of fact, that I am pretty clear telling people with my program that if your primary chief complaint is GERD, gastritis, or ulcer, or if one of those symptoms is like moderate to severe, I am not your person. I have had some good results here or there with people, but it's not consistent enough that I would feel comfortable having you do my program with that as your primary focus. I usually refer folks like that over to Molly Pelletier, who she has a YouTube channel, she has an Instagram, she has a course, she has an app. Like she has a lot of great offerings for you if your issue is more like upper GI related, stomach related. Let's see. Okay, so somebody's asked a couple times if I can contact you. Yeah, so let me grab, let's see, hold on. So this is the information about FODMAP Freedom. So this is how I work with people. Oh, geez, kidneys are failing because of gut and edema. I'll tell you right now. So that's how you would theoretically like look into working with me. It sounds like we probably wouldn't admit you to the program if there's something like potential kidney failure at play. That might be more appropriate for a one-on-one relationship with a practitioner. I need to be, aware and like mindful of what I'm able to accomplish safely and effectively in an online group coaching format. So if there's something potentially life-threatening or really, really bad, like kidney failure as part of your story, I don't think a group coaching program in general is going to be for you. But for anybody else, it's that fodmapfreedom.com/enroll. That's the information if you did want to work together. Let's see. Just a couple more, I think, guys, and then I'm going to log off. During my master's, I was stressed and got shingles. Oh, yeah, you were trashing your body, man. Shingles? And post 8 months, I am intolerant to lactose and FODMAPs. Is that post-infectious IBS? No. No. Post-infectious IBS is you got food poisoning and then you got IBS after that. So very specific, like, oh, I ate at this sketchy taco shop and then I vomited all night kind of a thing. Other infections, so like mono, strep throat, shingles, even parasitic infections or giardia, that does not qualify as the same thing. That to me sounds like you fried your vagus nerve to a damn crisp. If you stressed yourself out badly enough that you gave yourself shingles, that sounds to me like a crispy vagus nerve if I ever heard one. So I think there's going to be much more of a component of gut-brain axis, vagal tone, nervous system regulation, stress management, mental health kind of stuff that you're going to find a need to work on. But yeah, I would not hook into the post-infectious IBS thing for that. Do I have success stories with SIBO patients who also have long COVID or maybe developed SIBO after COVID infection and then got cured? Ooh, that's hard, Emery. That's really hard. I know that I've had students go through the program who attributed some piece of their puzzle to COVID infection or one of the shots. I don't know, like thinking back of how any of those people did. I don't know if I've like paid attention enough to that pattern and those individual cases where I could say definitively, yes, they got better or no, they didn't. It's long COVID and like consequences of COVID infection and vaccine injuries. That's something that I'm not super versed in. And it gives me a little bit of pause. Like that's just a really complicating variable on top of this other stuff. So I really don't know what I would expect with that. I wish I had a better answer though. Let's see. Any remedies for sweaty palms, which started after the shingles outbreak? Not intrinsically, but that's also a dead giveaway that your autonomic nervous system is like this. So your autonomic nervous system, it's automatic. Autonomic. See what they did there? It's running things behind the scenes without your conscious control. So part of the autonomic nervous system is your vagus nerve and the parasympathetics, and that's what's in charge of the rest and digest side of your nervous system. So this is what we're usually trying to stimulate more in the world of like IBS, SIBO, tummy problems, sort of stuff. The other side is your fight or flight side, or as I've also heard it called, fight, flight, freeze, appease. So it's the stress response. It's the survival response. Again, if you have sweaty palms that happened after that shingles outbreak, your nervous system, without a shadow of a doubt in my mind, is like this. And you're stuck in fight or flight mode. Basically, it's the sympathetic fight or flight part of the nervous system that causes the palm sweating. So that's a really good giveaway that you're stuck in fight or flight mode, my friend. And you need to start working on things that would regulate your nervous system and bring up your vagal tone. And a lot of that boils down to stress management and mental health kind of stuff. I talk about it here a fair amount here on this YouTube channel, as well as the IBS Freedom podcast, which has a separate YouTube channel. But yeah, I think you would benefit highly from what I teach in FODMAP Freedom, because that's a really big emphasis in the program. Let's see. Oh, so yeah, somebody asked about spike protein. I have no idea. Yeah, I really don't. I really don't know. Let's see. Am I planning to release the video for reviving your microbiome? I actually just submitted new stool testing for that. Yes. And it's funny. Part of why I fell off the wagon was because I was trying too many things too rapidly. I was doing like 2 weeks of a prebiotic and then 2 weeks off and then 2 weeks of a new prebiotic and then 2 weeks off. And I think I was giving my gut whiplash, and I wasn't being kind to myself doing that experiment. That kind of predated that antibiotic one. The other thing is I haven't really been making a conscious effort to rehab my microbiome. I've been just kind of like getting back to my normal way of eating, which is highly diverse and high in fiber. And like, I try to practice what I preach here. But I haven't been doing like a specific protocol to try to revive my microbiome after the antibiotics. But actually, I think yesterday was the 3-year anniversary of the ear surgery when I had the IV antibiotics. And so I actually did just submit new stool samples. Monday, I think, is when I mailed those off. So it'll take about 2 or 3 weeks for the results to come back in. And then it might take me a week or two to film and edit a video and get it up. But I would guesstimate that I'm going to publish something about that experiment sometime in the month of February, maybe early March. So yeah, funny enough. You've been around for a while on this channel then. That's an OG series. Let's see. Post-appendix surgery removal. Gut was never the same. But it does go away with spore-based probiotics. Yeah, we thought for a really long time that the appendix did not have a role to play. It didn't have a purpose. The best theory I've seen now is that it's basically a reservoir for your good bacteria. So if you do get food poisoning or have to take antibiotics or get sick and you poop out all of your good bacteria with a good round of diarrhea, the idea is that the appendix would be a reservoir for those bacteria so you could repopulate the gut. That's the kind of going theory right now. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that kind of builds on the dysbiosis hypothesis. Like if you're not as able to repopulate your gut after insult. But again, for this particular person, I think the stress vagal tone thing sounds like a more compelling root cause for you. Let's see. Do I have any advice for meals or diet while on rifaximin? Yeah, I mean, high in fiber, as much diversity as you could possibly get is going to be the broad recommendation. Yeah. Let's see. H. pylori positive in stool. negative in urea breath test. What test to believe? Okay, what test to believe? So for this person, if the H. pylori stool test was a conventional test, like LabCorp, Quest, something that your doctor ordered, I think I would still suspect that you have H. pylori. You can get a potential false negative with any of the H. pylori tests. So if you had one positive and one negative, I would still probably consider treating, especially if you're symptomatic for H. pylori. If you were diagnosed with H. pylori, if the positive stool antigen was coming from a functional stool test, like a GI map or a GI effects or a Biome FX or a gut zoomer, I probably wouldn't believe it. I think I would actually believe the negative urea breath test if that was the situation. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, this person with the mild C. diff, she said, I got my test result from one of the companies that you mentioned, caused me a lot of stress. I bet it did. When I said mild, it's because I don't have diarrhea or a fever. Doctor said I'm carrying. Yeah. If that's the case, I'll be truthful. I think if I remember correctly, when I did my split testing on BiomeFX, I'm pretty sure I had C. diff on that test. And I'm healthy. Like I feel fine. I'm a carrier of it. And that means I, like many of us, need to be really careful of overusing antibiotics and antimicrobials. Because if I kill too many of the bad guys, I do have a little bit of that C. diff hanging out in there waiting to have a party. But yeah, carriage is not necessarily cause for concern if it's not a full-blown infection. One of the many reasons that I have stepped away from the functional stool testing world. Let's see. Nancy said, well, this just came up on my feed. Well, I'm glad you joined us towards the end here, Nancy. I'm getting ready to wrap up momentarily. We had a panel on, so we had some success stories. So if you want to go watch the replay, the folks that I had on for the panel, they were on in the earlier half. I ended up just staying longer to answer questions. Not ask questions. I'm not asking the questions. But yeah, glad that you're here. And thank you for your honesty. Really helped. Yeah, I mean, I try. Again, I try not to gatekeep, guys. I'm a real person. What about post-infectious IDF after C. diff and Candida? Again, I don't think that either of those would classify as true post-infectious IBS. Post-infectious IBS is from bacteria that make cytolethal distending toxin, CDTB, and there's only a few bacteria that make that. E. coli, Klebsiella, there might be another one that I'm forgetting. There's only a small handful of bacteria that cause food poisoning that would make this cytolethal distending toxin. So my understanding is that C. diff and Candida also would not qualify as true post-infectious, like autoimmune kind of mechanism. I can't get my MMC to kickstart with herbal Prokinetics. Do I have bigger fish to fry? Almost certainly. Yeah. I'm really clear with my students in FODMAP Freedom. Prokinetics don't heal you. I don't even want people on herbal Prokinetics for a very long period of time. The thing is that they could be a really great Band-Aid and they could help you feel better a little bit sooner while you're working on the shit that actually matters. So that's the nutrition, the sleep, the stress, the movement, the blood sugar, the blood flow. Those are the things that really actually matter. And that's what's going to ultimately tone your nervous system and heal your nervous system so that it can do its job, including motility, better. But it's not, it's Prokinetics are great and I like using them. They're kind of like a cheat code in a video game. I love using them. But yeah, if the herbal Prokinetics didn't work for you, then you probably have much bigger fish to fry. Yeah. Let's see. You're welcome. Could I use a digestive enzyme to help me get used to more fiber sources and then titrate off? Yeah, you could certainly try that. I honestly, that's where the Prokinetics come in handy for a lot of people too, is oftentimes the Prokinetics help you enough that you're able to tolerate some high FODMAP, high fiber foods. And you kind of use that as a little bit of a crutch in the beginning. And then as you get more nourished and you diversify your microbiome and you start really organically feeling better, then you can phase out the Prokinetic. But I've seen the same type of phenomenon happen with Prokinetics and any sort of digestive aid ranging from betaine HCl, digestive bitters, ox bile, TUDCA, digestive enzymes, like any of those could be sort of an effective band-aid, but my preference is usually the Prokinetics, honestly. Let's see. All right, I'm gonna do one more because I keep saying I'm gonna go and then I get distracted with more. Let's see. Ooh, and actually hold on. We have a really good one that just came in. So Julian asked, do you recommend vitamin and mineral blood tests to determine deficiencies? Believe it or not, no, I don't. This is a really good question. I talk about this a little bit in the glutathione video that I have on this channel. So if you search glutathione, it should pop up. I can grab it in a minute. So I talked about in that video that I did some fancy schmancy functional testing, and it looked at a bajillion different vitamins and minerals and amino acids and fatty acids and all this cool stuff, right? And it showed that I was a bit low on glutathione. So I started taking N-acetylcysteine, NAC, and I did a retest a year or two later. And with taking N-acetylcysteine, my glutathione levels have normalized. Marvelous. But it was around that same period of time that I got really into using the Chronometer food diary app. And I'm just going to pull it up. So like you could, log all of your nutrition for the day. It gives you macros. And if you do a little bit deeper analysis, you can get vitamins and minerals and amino acids. Basically, what I ended up finding was, had I just done a couple days or a week on the free Chronometer app, I could have come to the same conclusion and I could have saved myself $400 a pop for that functional test. When I looked at my amino acid breakdown over the course of a couple weeks or maybe a month, I could see on Chronometer that I was not consuming enough cysteine. And so knowing that cysteine is one of the amino acids necessary to make glutathione, I could have easily put 2 and 2 together using a free app. So I honestly am at a point where I don't recommend vitamin and mineral testing typically. I would rather you do a really good food diary for a couple of days. A week would be fantastic, but even if you get like 2 or 3 days under your belt, that's marvelous. But I would rather get a really good food diary on Chronometer and see what you're consuming before jumping into any sort of testing. So that's food for thought. And honestly, you could see all of the different nutrients. You could get real nerdy with something like Chronometer versus if you're going to do vitamin and mineral testing, you're going to test each nutrient one at a time, or you're going to do one of these like mega super jumbo $400, $500 panels from a functional doctor. And again, like it's not necessary. Just try Chronometer for real, guys. And that's probably what you need to get the job done. Let me grab the link for Chronometer really quick. And you can fill it out in your browser. But most people use a smartphone app. You can do both for that matter. And then let me grab the glutathione video because I did mention that a couple of times. Hold on. Let's see, copy. Okay, here is the glutathione video that I've mentioned a few times. And last but not least, there's the information for FODMAP Freedom and how you could work with me if you want to do that. So those are just a couple of links here towards the end. Let's see. Yeah. Yep. Glad to help, Julianne. Yeah, that was a really good question. That was a good grand finale. So thank you for that. Yeah, so guys, that wraps up another live stream. So thank you all for attending. Like I was sharing earlier, we had a couple of guests come on earlier for about the first hour and a half, and we talked about their journey, what their health, their gut journey kind of looked like, what symptoms they had, what worked for them, what didn't work for them, why they ultimately have found success, and what they're working on now. So if you want to hear like the success story part of this, just go and watch the replay and watch the first like hour and a half or so, I would say. And then I just stuck around for another, 40, 45 minutes and answered some questions. So that's kind of a wrap on today's live stream. We will do another one here in a couple of months. Basically, when FODMAP Freedom is open, I tend to do one of these, and that has ended up being a good schedule for me. So I'll do another one. We'll be enrolling again for FODMAP Freedom in like late April, I think, if I remember correctly. So if we miss you during the January enrollment, It's all right. We'll be here again, but I would be honored and delighted to help some of you in FODMAP freedom. So if you want, again, more coaching, more hand-holding and understanding from me and more live Q&A from me, then I hope you consider joining FODMAP freedom. And otherwise, I will see you right back here on YouTube. I have a fun and exciting series actually that's going to post in the first 2 weeks of February. I will announce that probably in the next week or so here on this channel, and I hope that you enjoy it. It's a little bit of a throwback to my roots here as the gut microbiome queen. I'm not going to give away any more of the exciting surprise, but I think that it'll be enlightening, and I hope that you guys enjoy that new series when it pops up here. Again, keep your eyes peeled the first week of February. And for those of you who are interested in FODMAP Freedom, we are open for enrollment through Thursday/Friday at midnight. So basically you have until the end of the day Thursday. Something important to know though is that you need to do a discovery call before you're given the link to join. So it's not like you can impulsively decide Thursday at midnight, oh, I want to join, and then you could just go click. You need to talk to somebody first. You need to talk to a FODMAP Freedom coach, and we need to understand if this is going to be a good fit for you and vice versa before you're given the link to join. So you could book that discovery call on the FODMAP Freedom /enroll page that I linked in the comments here. But I hope that some of you do your discovery call this week and get a better sense of whether or not we can help you in FODMAP Freedom. I'm very confident I can help you if your primary chief complaints, your number one priority are bloating, abdominal distension, like the preggo belly that poofs up the minute you look at a FODMAP or a carb, abdominal pain, cramping, diarrhea, constipation, or mixed bowel pattern. If you have any of those or all of the above, I'm very confident that I can help you in FODMAP freedom. If you have more upper GI stuff that I had mentioned earlier, Molly Pelletier is fantastic with GERD, LPR, reflux, ulcer, that sort of stuff. So if you're more in the territory of like the esophagus and the stomach, I would go to Molly Pelletier. But if you are small intestine to the anus, if that is where your primary chief complaint lies, then I'm your gal. And I hope that some of you will consider joining me in FODMAP Freedom. I'm really excited to kick off with another group of students here. And I am looking at the pile of boxes that I have to ship out and all the dang Prokinetics that I have to baggy up next week. But I'm excited for people to try them out because it works. It's a labor of love. That's why I do it, because it works. So I'm excited for some of you to try the Prokinetic Speed Dating Challenge. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you all. I see some thank yous in the comments. You are most welcome. And I will see you back here for, again, for some cool new videos first couple weeks of February. Now I've got to get editing those videos. So take care. Have a great night. And